Some stories are not about revenge. At least, not in the way we expect. They are not about destruction. They are not about payback.
They are about something far more unsettling. What happens when life plays jokes on us? What happens when the person you once had power over becomes the one who holds power over you and those you love? It all began in a place that should have been safe, a school. A place where futures are built or damaged, a place where character is formed. But safety is a fragile illusion, especially when power is uneven. There was a boy named Anthony. He was neither loud nor aggressive. He did not seek attention. Neither sought he for validation. He simply existed. And sometimes that alone is enough to provoke those who are unsettled within themselves. Anthony was a smart and intelligent lad who knew the answer to every question in class. He topped his class in every paper, every exam. But human nature doesn't always appreciate excellence. At times, it despises it. Anthony's quiet accomplishments made him known, and soon, rather than being a model of emulation, he quickly became a threat, a target. Another boy noticed him, Alex. And what Alex felt was not hatred, at least not at first. It was something more sinister. It was insecurity. Because Anthony's quiet confidence and intelligence acted like a mirror, reflecting everything Alex was not. And instead of building himself, Alex chose to break what he envied. And so it began, not as a single act, but as a pattern, a routine. The kind of cruelty that does not arrive loudly, but settles in quietly until it becomes part of the culture. At first, it was small enough to ignore. A book taken from Anthony's desk, held just out of reach, returned only after a few laughs had been earned. Then, it only grew worse. A chair pulled slightly away before he could sit, followed by the jests and laughter. There were words, too. Words of ridicule and mockery aimed at breaking one's self-esteem. And when Anthony chose silence, as he often did, his silence was not respected. It was read as weakness. Because silence, in the hands of the insecure, becomes permission. The pattern deepened. Lunch became something to endure rather than enjoy. A tray nudged just enough to spill. A seat taken just before he could reach it. A space closed just before he could sit, until sitting alone became the only option. There were moments designed to humiliate, subtle enough to deny, but sharp enough to hurt. A bag filled with dirt. A notebook dipped in water. Answers mocked under the breath of someone who had not bothered to understand them. And always, there was laughter, shared between those who wanted to belong more than they wanted to speak up. Everyone saw and observed these events, the repetition and patterns. Teachers noticed the discomfort, but chose silence. Alex's father was the school's biggest donor. He had too much influence to be challenged. And so the routine routine continued, day after day, moment after moment, until what started as behavior became identity. Not just who Alex was, but who Anthony was expected to be. Alex came from a rich and powerful family. Alex's father owned the largest real estate company in the region. But Alex's father was not just wealthy. He was the most influential man in the city. A donor, a decision maker, a man whose money quietly bent the rules. And so his children didn't play by the rules. The system simply adjusted to suit them. The school management turned a blind eye to the injustice. And in a cruel twist, the fault was placed on Anthony for being too quiet, too sharp to fit in. A square peg in a round hole.
However, some battles, they say, are best left for tomorrow. Realizing the emotional pain their son was placed under, Anthony's parents decided to withdraw him. And when Anthony finally left, no apology followed. The world moved on, like nothing ever happened. Pain can do two things to a man. It can destroy a man, or it can make one. Anthony chose to do the latter, but he didn't grow without challenges. His new school was smaller, less prestigious, lesser known. He arrived behind in knowledge, behind in confidence, behind in esteem. And he doubted himself. He questioned everything until someone noticed. Mr. Daniels, a teacher, wise and old in his 60s. Not powerful, not famous, but perceptive. He did not comfort Anthony. He challenged him. He pulled him out of his comfort zone and placed him in positions of responsibility. He made him the class prefect. He also required Anthony to lead tutorials for other students. And then he told him something that cut deeper than any lesson. Success was never an option. It was the only option. If he failed, others would carry that failure too. His family, his children, his future. Everything yet to come. So the question he needed to ask himself was simple. How far was he willing to go to protect the people he loved? At that moment, Anthony realized success was a decision the world had already made for him. It was a do or die affair. Then everything changed. He regained his spark. He consistently outperformed his class. He became bolder and stood firm against any form of intimidation. He worked on himself, both personally and socially. Soon he excelled in both sports and academics. Days turned into months, and months into years. Soon he graduated as the class valedictorian. He would never forget Mr. Daniels' words to him during his graduation ceremony. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is indeed a part of it. Anthony stopped reacting to his past and started building his future. There were days without certainty, moments where effort felt insufficient. But he continued. Opportunities came rarely, but when they came,
he was ready. Time passed. Education became expertise. Expertise became opportunity. Opportunity became power. But his power was different. Not inherited or borrowed. It was built, earned, constructed from the ground up. While Anthony was building up, Alex was sliding down. Because privilege without substance does not last. It collapses. Behind Alex's family wealth, there were fractures no one talked about. Every empire has a weakness, no matter how powerful they look. Alex's father had made bad decisions. Quiet miscalculations. A mountain of debt. Borrowed boldly to build. On a single belief. That property prices would never fall. For years, it worked. The real estate market rose in value. The numbers looked right. The illusion held. And then, the global financial crisis hit. And without warning, everything collapsed. Property values sank, and fast. Tenants disappeared. Rent stopped coming in. Across the market, people could no longer keep up. Mortgages failed, and confidence vanished. And the banks, they came knocking. Foreclosures, repossessions, no exceptions. Anthony's father watched it happen in real time. Everything he had built vaporized before his eyes. One property, then another, then all of them. Gone. Because behind the empire was a fragile truth. He had become over-leveraged. Too much debt, resting on an assumption that no longer existed. Without rental income, there was nothing left to service the loans. Unfortunately, losing everything was only the beginning. The properties were sold, but at a fraction of their initial value. Not even enough to cover half of what was owed. And the bank didn't walk away. They came for him, personally. Several lawsuits were filed against him. Because when the assets failed, the debt remained. The shame was explosive. It detonated his reputation beyond repair. The man who once stood above the market now stood beneath it. The great real estate baron, now worth less than the beggar on the street. And Alex's father, once untouchable, once unquestioned, found himself cornered by consequences he could no longer outrun. So he chose escape. He chose to end his own life. And for Alex, his nightmare had just begun. Friends vanished. Allies withdrew. Doors closed. Calls went unanswered. Because the world had never respected Alex. Only what stood behind him. Time passed. But Alex did not grow. Because growth requires humility. And humility had never been part of his life. Until now. His marriage ended. Not suddenly, but inevitably. His wife left him, taking what little wealth remained, leaving him with nothing except his son. Andrew, his son. The only thing that still mattered in his bitter life. And now, the one thing at risk. Andrew, Alex's son, became seriously sick. Hospital visits became routine. The doctors spoke, each word landing like unbearable weight. Though their words were different, they all carried the same meaning. His condition is critical. He requires urgent treatment. Specialized care required. Each word heavier than the last. Alex had no money to foot the bills. Some doctors only met with him out of respect for his father. But still, the bills had to be paid. Alex walked down to an empty hallway. And for the first time, Alex couldn't hold back the tears. He was no longer the rich kid, nor the bully people feared. Neither was he the successor to a billion-dollar empire anymore. Standing there, he was just a father, realizing for the first time what it felt to be weak. How it felt when you couldn't protect the ones you love. Alex sat outside the hospital, trapped in a silence louder than anything he had ever known. For the first time, he understood something he had spent his whole life avoiding. He had nothing. No, not really. No real friendships. No loyalty or skills. No one who cared enough to stay. All those years, he had pushed good people away, abused them, dismissed them. And in their place, he surrounded himself with snakes. People who smiled when he had money and influence, and vanished the moment it disappeared. Now his phone stayed quiet, calls unanswered, messages ignored. No one came. No one checked. No one cared. And sitting there, with nothing but the weight of his own choices, Alex faced a truth he could no longer escape. For the first time in his life, he was completely alone. And for the first time, he had to pull his own weight. Then came the question, Dad, am I going to die? And for the first time, Alex had no answer. Life did not pause for him. It moved forward, indifferent to his readiness, unconcerned with his grief. And so he was pushed, not by ambition, not by pride, but by desperation. Because somewhere, in a hospital room filled with uncertainty, his son was still waiting, still fighting, still depending on him. And so Alex began to search, not for opportunity, but for survival. He reached for anything, any job, any role, any chance. But the world he had once known no longer recognized him. He had no skills he could prove, no network that would answer, no name that carried weight anymore. And so, rejection became familiar. First once, then again, then so many times, it started to feel normal, and it became expected. Doors did not just close, they never opened. And with each attempt, something inside him grew quieter. His life, once defined by excess, now felt stripped down to nothing. His previous friends no longer picked his calls, let alone employ him. his life became bleak, heavy, and unforgiving. Until one day, he found himself sitting on the pavement by the road, not by choice, but by exhaustion. Beside him was a small newspaper stand, surrounded by movement that had nothing to do with him. He sat still, and for the first time, he questioned everything. Was this real? Was this the same life where he once lived so lavishly? How does a man fall this far, this fast? How does wealth disappear so completely that even dignity struggles to remain? And under the weight of those questions, he lifted his head, not with hope, but with nothing left to lose. And that was when he saw it. Not something obvious, not something designed to be noticed, but something so small it was almost invisible. At the bottom corner of a newspaper page, there was an advert, a vacancy for a janitor, a role so far removed from the life he once lived. In the past, he would not have even seen it or cared, but now it was all he could see. Because value changes when survival is on the line. The job was small, insignificant by every standard he once believed in. But none of that mattered anymore, because somewhere his son still needed him, and that made this everything. So he stood up, slowly, deliberately, as if rising into a new reality he had not chosen, but could no longer avoid. He reached for a small piece of paper, wrote down the contact details, carefully, as if the act itself carried weight. And when he applied, he did not hold back. There was no pride left to protect, no image left to maintain. Only urgency, only desperation, only hope, fragile but present. It was the most honest application he had ever made. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Because for the first time in his life, he was not asking for a mere opportunity. He was asking for a chance. 1 week later, an email arrived. Not extraordinary in appearance, not dramatic in tone, but to Alex, it was everything. Because for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, someone had responded. He had been scheduled for an interview, and that alone felt unfamiliar. He read it more than once, not because it was complicated, but because it was unexpected. This was not rejection. This was not silence. This was hope. And so he prepared. With what little he had, he gathered the best clothes he could afford. Not impressive, not refined, but enough to get him through the door. And on the scheduled day, he made his way to the company, Patron International. The building stood tall, 50 floors of glass and steel, rising into the sky without limitation. And as Alex approached, he felt intimidated by its raw aura. Environments like this once belonged to him, but now They reminded him of everything he had lost. As he stepped inside, the space was silent. Not empty, but controlled. Deliberate quiet. The kind that speaks of structure, of order, of power. He approached the reception, spoke carefully, almost cautiously. He was directed upward to the 47th floor. The elevator was made of glass, so he could see each floor as he went up. Each passing level felt like a reminder of where he once stood and where he no longer did. When he arrived, he was received by a secretary, young, composed, and professional. And then he was told something unexpected. The CEO had requested to interview him personally. For a moment, it did not make sense, because nothing about his situation suggested that level of attention. But desperation does not question opportunity, so he accepted it. And when the time came, he was led into an office that defined success. Everything about the office spoke of luxury, scale, precision, and power. It was more lavish than a luxurious penthouse, beyond anything he had ever seen. The room radiated authority, and there, behind a massive mahogany desk, sat a man. Still, focused, reading, unhurried and unbothered. Alex stood there, waiting, until the man looked up. And in that moment, time collapsed, because after more than 30 years, they had seen each other again. Anthony and Alex. Anthony saw him first and almost did not recognize him. Not because he had forgotten all the pain, but because the figure that stood before him was not who he remembered. This was not the boy who once stood above him. This was someone else, someone worn down with stress, stripped of both food and certainty, carrying the quiet weight of loss. Alex looked broken, humbled, and filled with something deeper than regret, despair. And yet, Alex did not realize who sat before him, because when he looked forward, he did not recognize Anthony. Not in the man, not in the presence, not in the posture, not in the power, because the boy he once knew no longer existed. That version had been left behind. What stood before him now was something entirely different. A man fully formed, grounded, composed, physically built. His presence undeniable, his posture certain, his stillness controlled, his appearance sharp as the samurai's blade. Everything about him spoke of discipline, of growth and transformation. And in that moment, Alex did realize something. This was not a man who was given power. This was a man who took it, who built his wealth from the ground up. And for the first time, without words, the truth revealed itself. The balance had shifted, absolutely and completely. The roles had changed. The one who once held power now needed it. And the one who once suffered now had it. And just then and there, 200 meters above sea level, the past came rushing back to Anthony. Not gently or quietly, but like a storm, waiting years to break. The memories returned. The mockery, the insults, the laughter, echoing long after the crowd was gone. The bruises that healed but never truly disappeared. And that suffocating feeling of being small, powerless, and invisible. Anthony felt it all again. For a split second, his face hardened, flushed with a rage he thought he had buried decades ago. This was him, Alex, the same Alex, standing here, right in front of him. Smaller now, weaker. Life had definitely not been kind to him. And in that moment, Anthony realized something. He had a choice. He could return the pain, strip Alex of dignity, the same way his had once been taken. He could end the interview before it even began. Or worse, offer him the job, only to make a mockery of him. The power was his now. But Anthony chose self-control. He exhaled slowly, and just like that, the storm settled. "Please sit, Mr. Alex." His voice was calm, steady, and controlled. "Can you tell me a bit about yourself?" Anthony asked, although he knew exactly who Alex was. Completely oblivious, Alex began. His voice trembled, words stumbling at first. But he pushed through, sentence by sentence, holding on to what little confidence remained. Anthony listened, not as a victim, not as a judge, but as a man watching something unexpected. 30 years ago, no one would have imagined this. The great Alex, now here, applying for a janitor role in his company. Life had a strange sense of irony. When Alex finished speaking, silence filled the room. Anthony leaned back, studying him, not with anger, but with something deeper, disbelief. Then finally, after what felt to Alex like eternity, Anthony replied, "Congratulations." Alex froze. "You've been accepted." The words took a moment to truly land. "You'll be assigned to the executive floor. This floor." Relief flooded Alex's face, almost too quickly to contain. "The secretary will guide you. You can resume tomorrow." For a moment, Alex just stared, as if confirming this was real. Then gratitude took over. He moved to kneel, but Anthony stopped him. "You don't have to do that, Alex." "It's okay," Anthony replied. "No anger, no malice, just closure." And in that quiet office, something shifted. That day, Anthony made more than a decision. He made a choice. Restraint over rage. Growth over grievance. And somewhere within him, a chapter closed. Alex made his way home, each step lighter than the last, carrying something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. At home, the door creaked open. His son looked up. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, Alex smiled. A real smile. "Daddy has a new job," Alex said. His voice carried quiet pride. He knelt down, placing his hands gently on his son's shoulders. "Things are going to get better now," Alex said. And in that small room, with so little, everything had changed. For a while, life softened. Not dramatically, not enough to call it comfort, but just enough. Enough food on the table, enough light to push back the darkness, enough stability to breathe, even if only slightly. For the first time in years, Alex felt stable, like he was holding things together. But life rarely stays still. A few months later, the cracks returned. Andrew's health began to slip, slowly at first, then all at once. What was manageable became urgent. What was hope became fear. And soon, the truth became unavoidable. This was serious. Andrew needed critical care. The kind that doesn't wait. The kind that doesn't come cheap. Alex did the math again and again, hoping the numbers would change. They didn't. There was no way he could afford the medical bills, not with his salary, not even close. And so he faced it. He needed help, not just from anyone, from his boss, Anthony. But power comes with distance. You don't just walk in to see a man like Anthony. You request, you wait, you hope. Alex tried, but Anthony's schedule was full. Weeks ahead, months into the future. Time he didn't have. So Alex made a decision. If he couldn't reach him formally, he would wait in his pathway after work hours. That night, after closing hours, Alex stood in the quiet hallway leading to Anthony's private car park, and he waited. Hours passed. The building emptied. Lights shut off, one by one. Silence settled in. Morning came, but Anthony never showed. He had left through the rooftop heliport. Most people would have stopped there. Alex didn't. The next night, he returned. And the next. And also the next. 5 nights. 5 long nights of waiting. Holding on to hope desperately. On the 5th day, it happened. Anthony walked through the hallway, and before anyone could react, Alex collapsed right there on the floor. Anthony's bodyguards moved instantly, forming a barrier, protocol, protection, control. But Alex pushed forward, his voice breaking through. "Sir, Please, I need your help. Tears followed before he could finish his words. Please, save my son. The guards tightened their hold, ready to remove him. But Anthony raised his hand. Let him speak. The room stilled. Alex struggled to his knees, his voice trembling under the weight of everything at stake. I've been waiting here every night for 5 days. My son is in critical condition. If I can't pay the bills, his voice broke. I will lose him. He bowed his head. He's all I have. Anthony went quiet. He knew this feeling all too well. The feeling of helplessness, despair. The kind that strips a man of everything. And in that moment, there was no past, no history or vengeance. Just one father standing before another. Stand up, Anthony said, his voice calm yet firm. I will take care of your son. Alex froze. You love your family very much, Anthony continued. I respect that. And for the first time in a long time, Alex felt something new. Not arrogance, not cruelty, just love. Raw and unfiltered. Anthony turned slightly to his side. Handle it, he said to his bodyguard. And just with those 2 words, all of Alex's problems disappeared. Andrew was moved to a top-tier hospital. No delays nor compromises. Every expense covered. Specialist doctors who couldn't be reached suddenly became available. And slowly, Andrew began to recover. But Anthony didn't stop there, because sometimes saving a life isn't enough. You have to change it. When Andrew got better, Anthony made another decision, one that would echo far beyond that moment. He offered Andrew a full scholarship to one of the most prestigious prep schools, a place for the elite, where doors open differently, where futures are rewritten. The same school his son attended. And just like that, the boy who almost didn't make it was given a second chance. A chance to become something more in life. Meanwhile, the past found its way back. Not in memories, not in regrets, but in the life of a child. Anthony also had a son named Asher. Asher had begun to notice something. The attention and care, the quiet kindness his father showed to Alex and Andrew. And somewhere deep within him, resentment took root. At first, it was subtle, almost invisible. A careless laugh, a whispered comment, a lingering look. But resentment rarely stays small. At school, it grew. Mockery turned sharper. Laughter grew louder. A shove, less accidental. And then the words came, cold and direct, unforgiving. You don't belong here. Your father is just a poor janitor. And just like that, history began to repeat itself. Only this time, Alex wasn't the one causing the pain. He was the one watching it. Through his son, Andrew changed. Quietly and gradually. The kind of change only a parent would notice. Short answers, forced smiles, eyes carrying weight no child should hold. Alex noticed every single day. One evening, couldn't ignore it anymore. Why the sad face, son? His voice gentle. Since you started this school, you seem very different. Andrew hesitated. Silence lingered. Then softly, almost ashamed, I wish my father wasn't a janitor. Time stopped. Andrew continued. The other kids say, I don't belong there. And in that instant, Alex felt it. Not just pain, but recognition. Because those weren't just words. They were echoes of words he once said, of who he once was. He asked more questions, carefully and patiently, and the truth emerged. Andrew was being bullied. The same way Alex had once bullied someone else, and that realization broke him. Not on the outside, but where it mattered most. Guilt flooded in, heavy and unforgiving, wrapping around him like something he could not escape. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. This was karma, and it had finally come back to roost. And for the first time, Alex truly understood what it meant to feel small. He felt unworthy of the kindness shown to him, of the opportunities given to his son. And so he made a decision. He would face it. That weekend, Alex would pay Anthony a visit at his penthouse. Alone. The building loomed, massive and tranquil, a world far from his own. Inside, everything was polished, perfect, yet intimidating. He was led into the living room, told to wait. Minutes passed, heavy ones. Then Anthony walked in, calm and composed. How have you been, Alex? He asked. Very fine, sir, Alex replied. My son is healthy now. A faint smile. I haven't been this happy in a long time. I'm very grateful. I don't know how I will ever repay you. Anthony nodded. Don't worry about repayment. It's fine. A brief pause. So what brings you here? Alex inhaled slowly, like a man preparing to confess. Sir, I believe karma has caught up with me. Anthony said nothing. He listened. When I was younger, I bullied someone. His voice trembled. I bullied him so much, he had to change schools. Silence filled the room. And now, my son is going through the same thing. The room grew heavier. For the first time, I understand what I did. I regret it. He lowered his head. I just hope, wherever he is, he can forgive me. Anthony leaned forward, studying him. Do you remember his name? Anthony asked. Alex shook his head. "No, sir." "Do you know what became of him?" Anthony asked. "I don't know," Alex replied. "I never cared back then."
Anthony studied him for a brief moment. If you could speak to him today, what would you say?
This time, Alex didn't hesitate. I would ask him to tell me anything. Anything I can do. Anything at all to gain his forgiveness. I feel so guilty and responsible for what my son is going through. Anthony watched him silently. "Sir, there's something else." Alex's voice grew heavier. "I don't think my family deserves this kindness." Anthony frowned slightly. "The scholarship. Everything. We do not deserve your kindness, sir. I want to withdraw my son." Anthony's tone sharpened. "Why would you want to do that?" Anthony replied. Alex sat there quiet, unable to hold back the tears. "He is going through so much pain there, and it's all my fault," Alex cried out. "Our mistakes are what we call experience. We cannot change the past." He stepped closer. "But we have today to make things right." Alex looked up. "Running away won't fix this," Anthony continued. "If you truly regret, then do something about it. Make the world a better place for our children. Stand against bullying. Be the man you should have been many years ago." Anthony paused to observe him. "If you do that, the boy you hurt, he is going to forgive you." Alex looked at him for a moment. "How would you know that, sir?" Alex asked, surprised. "Because action speaks louder than words. So yes, he would believe you when you say you are sorry. And concerning your son, not to worry. I will handle it," Anthony replied. "The bullying will stop." And just like that, it was settled. He didn't reveal the truth, that he was the boy Alex hurt in the past. Because this moment was not about revenge. It was about redemption. Alex nodded, slowly and gratefully. And as he walked out, he carried something new. Not just regret and pain, but purpose. Because karma had not come to destroy him. It had come to transform him. Sometimes dreams don't fail because they are too big. They fail because we try to achieve them alone. Anthony's son, Asher, had always wanted one thing. Not a trophy, not applause, but recognition. People believed he could only succeed because he came from wealth. He was going to prove them wrong. He was going to be class captain, not for fame, not for power, but for the respect of having achieved this alone. He refused to live in his father's shadow. For 3 years straight, he had tried and failed. Not because he lacked confidence. Boy, he had a whole lot of that. He spoke well, carried himself boldly, and commanded attention. But the process demanded more. To become class captain, you needed 2 things: a voice and words worth listening to. Each candidate had to stand before the class with a running mate
and deliver a speech. The best speech won. 3 times, Asher's words had fallen flat because while he could speak, he didn't know what to say. Meanwhile, in the same school, Andrew, Alex's son, was known for something else. Not his voice, but his writing. Teachers spoke about him, quietly and respectfully. The best speech or script writer in this school. Stories flowed through him, effortlessly and natural. When he wrote, it felt like a celestial being had penned it down in his sleep, as if something greater had chosen him, and he simply listened. Anthony himself had seen it. At a school event, amid applause and performances, Andrew stepped forward, quiet and unassuming. And then he read aloud a poem. Anthony had never heard such moving words before. The room fell silent, not because of volume, but because each phrase transcended rationality and stirred up feelings. Every line carried weight. Anthony listened carefully, and in that moment, he understood. This boy was different. Andrew didn't just write. He turned simple words into emotions, a rare kind of power. Anthony also knew it was his son Asher who bullied Andrew. He had gotten reports in the past from the class teacher. Anthony observed. He connected the dots and made a move. Quietly, a conversation with the class teacher. A small adjustment was made to the pairing list for the class captain campaign speeches. When the pairing list for the class captain campaign got released, Asher glanced at it, then paused. Andrew was his running mate. His expression hardened. This doesn't make sense, but it wasn't a mistake. It was designed to be, with intention. Their first meeting was cold. Asher took control immediately. We don't need anything complicated. I'll handle the speech. Andrew nodded. Asher was proud and intolerant. He could hardly see past his ego. Andrew remained calm and unbothered. And just like that, he was ignored. The candidate introduction round came quickly. Asher stepped forward, energetic and confident as usual. And he spoke. His words were strong and clear, but they felt generic and empty. They were nothing the audience hadn't heard before. The words lacked meaning or depth, and when it ended, the room responded the same way, unmoved. Another failure. Deep down, Asher knew he had lost the candidate introduction round. He felt lost. He couldn't bear losing the elections a 4th time. That night, something broke inside him. For the first time, he realized confidence wasn't enough. He sat with his father, quiet and frustrated.
I don't understand. I did everything right. Anthony looked at him. Did you? His father asked. A pause. Or did you try to do everything alone? The question lingered. Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice, his father continued. It's about being humble enough to acknowledge when you need help. Another pause. What matters more to you? Your pride or your goals?
And just like that, the answer became clear. The next day, Asher approached Andrew, not with pride, but with humility.
I think we should work together. Andrew looked at him. He studied him.
Okay, Andrew replied.
No resentment, no ego, just readiness. And that changed everything. They started small, with ideas, themes, and direction. Andrew wrote carefully and intentionally. Every word had purpose. Every sentence carried weight. Asher read it, then spoke it.
Asher could feel it. Something had changed. The words felt alive because they meant something. The words spoke to the heart, not the mind.
Days passed. The speech evolved from good to powerful. The day for the final election campaign arrived. The classroom filled to the brim. Tension hung in the air. After the other candidates had presented their manifestos to the audience, Asher stepped forward. But this time, he wasn't alone. He carried Andrew's words. And when he began, his voice stirred attention. The confidence remained, but now it had direction. The words landed, not on ears, but in hearts. The room stilled. Every chatter faded. Every movement paused. And they listened. Every word drew them closer. Time seemed to wait. And when he finished, there was silence, a powerful one. Then it broke. Applause erupted, loud and relentless, unforgettable. Because this wasn't just a speech, it was a moment. When the results were announced, there was no suspense nor competition. Asher and Andrew. A landslide victory. The sound of cheering and clapping continued. Asher stood still, processing it. The dream finally became reality. But this time, he had learned a valuable lesson. He turned to Andrew and said, "This wouldn't have been possible without you." Another pause. Thank you. Andrew had never heard Asher say thank you before. The shock too large for him to process, so he said nothing. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. They stood together, not as opposites, but as partners. Asher, the voice. Andrew, the words. Together, they became leaders, class captain and vice. But more than that, they became friends. From a distance, Anthony watched, quiet and satisfied, because the lesson was learned, not through force, but through experience. This time, the past didn't repeat itself. Anthony had rewritten the story. Regret can do one of two things. It can bury a man, or it can rebuild him. Alex chose the latter. He didn't run from his past anymore. He faced it, he accepted it, and embraced it. And then
he did something most people never do. He transformed his life with it. What once lived as guilt became purpose. He began with a simple idea. No child should ever feel powerless. No child should live in silence and fear, not in the shadows of someone else's cruelty. So he built something, not a regular business, but a non-profit, one that will stand between children and the pain he once caused. It would provide a safe space, a place to speak and be heard, a community where their voices finally mattered. And slowly, it grew. From one child to many. From ideas to impact. Because when something is built from truth, it carries weight. And quietly from the background, Anthony watched, not with surprise, but with understanding, because he knew what this was. Not charity, but redemption. And so he supported from the sidelines, not for recognition, but because he believed in the vision. He supported Alex, not just with resources, though those came, but with something deeper: clarity, organization, and strategy. Where Alex had passion, Anthony brought direction. Where Alex had purpose, Anthony built systems. Together, they became partners, heart and mind. And what they built was no longer just an organization. It became a movement, one that protected and educated, one that stood against the very thing that once defined Alex: violence, malice, and bullying. And in doing so, Alex did something remarkable. He didn't erase his past. He repurposed it, turned pain into protection, turned regret into impact. And for the first time, the past no longer haunted him. It lived peacefully inside him, as a reminder, not of who he was, but of who he chose to become. Time moved the way it always did, quietly, without announcement. Days folded into months, and before anyone thought to measure it, a year had passed. And so the night to celebrate the organization's 1-year anniversary arrived. It would be a night of grand celebration. The venue shimmered under soft lights, carefully arranged to impress and comfort at the same time. Laughter drifted easily through the air, light and untroubled, as though nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. But beneath it all, a time bomb waited to explode. At the center of the evening stood Alex. He moved with confidence, smiling, greeting, accepting praise. Every handshake affirmed the story he had built around himself. Every compliment strengthened the image. A man committed to change, to purpose, to giving children the opportunities they deserved. An NGO devoted to childhood education, healthcare, and protection. A noble cause, a clean narrative. But the past has a way of outlasting narratives. It doesn't disappear. It waits. And tonight, it had come to collect. Anthony arrived the way he always did, without noise, without urgency. There was a calm precision to him, the kind that came from years of mastering restraint. Beside him walked a man who carried the quiet authority of someone who had seen too many broken children and tried to fix what he could. Mr. Daniels. He was Anthony's class teacher many years ago in school. The man who had once seen something in Anthony when the world had not. Alex welcomed them warmly. A handshake, a smile, a polite exchange. Unaware that in that moment, he stood face to face with a living fragment of his own forgotten past. They spoke as strangers do, pleasantly, carefully, without depth. But something had already begun. A thread had been pulled, and slowly, almost invisibly, things were starting to unravel. Later, away from the noise, Alex found himself alone beside Mr. Daniels at the drinks table. It began simply enough. Casual conversations, polite interest. But some conversations carry weight long before you understand why. You'd be surprised how long the effects of childhood experiences last, Mr. Daniels said. The sentence was calm, measured, but Alex felt uneasy nonetheless. In that moment, the past knocked. Alex smiled, but something in him shifted. His grip tightened ever so slightly around the glass in his hand, because there was something about the way the man spoke, something that felt directed at him, personal, too precise to be random. Then came another line, delivered just as subtly. You don't always get a second chance with the people you hurt. At first, it sounded like wisdom. Then, it felt more like judgment. And finally, for the first time, Alex truly looked at the man standing beside him, and something in his chest tightened. So he asked the question, the one question that would not let the night remain what it was. Mr. Daniels, how do you know Anthony? Alex asked. Mr. Daniels, never one to rush, answered slowly, like a door opening to a room long sealed. Anthony had been one of my brightest students, brilliant and driven, but he always seemed to carrying something unseen. It felt like he was fractured beneath the surface. It didn't take long for me to realize he had been through trauma. Oh, I have seen many over the years. You see, Anthony once attended New Heritage Elementary School, but he didn't stay. No, of course he couldn't, because what he faced there was no ordinary childhood cruelty. It was relentless, severe, enough to force him out, the old man said. The words settled into Alex's mind, but not all at once. New Heritage. That was his school. The name lingered. Alex felt uncomfortable. The old man continued to narrate how Anthony was bullied as a child. Soon, the old man's story started to sound familiar. Alex searched his memory. Faces, classmates, moments. Nothing. No Anthony, no boy from school days resembled the man he knew now. And yet, something refused to sit right. He thought to himself, if someone like Anthony had been in my school, someone this wealthy, this accomplished, surely I would recognize him. But Mr. Daniels continued, and with each word, the distance between past and present began to collapse. Anthony, he said, was not born into privilege. His father had been a poor dry cleaner. Everything he had become, he had built, all from nothing. The transformation is so profound, it still amazes me. That the skinny, poor boy from years ago had grown to become the man standing across the room. A year surfaced in Alex's mind, clear and unmistakable. He had known a particular skinny boy years back in school. A boy he bullied so hard, he had to leave the school. But he didn't resemble the man he knows today in any possible way. And then the question came, hesitant but necessary. Did he ever mention the person who bullied him? The old man laughed at the silly question. Alex, you don't still get it, do you? It's been you all this while. All the bitterness and evil, you planted it all. Anthony called me the first day you stepped into his office for the interview. He couldn't just believe his eyes. He had seen your name as one of the applicants for the role, and he had requested to interview you personally to confirm he wasn't dreaming. He had told me his heart burned for revenge. He wanted to make you pay for taking away the joy of his childhood. But I managed to remind him why he fought so hard for all this wealth, all this power. And it was to make the world a better place, not to be a part of its darkness. Alex, it's nice to finally meet you in person. Time did not stop, but it slowed. Enough for everything to fall into place. This time, the memory did not betray him. It did not blur or soften. It returned exactly as it was, clear and unforgiving. The laughter, the cruelty, the boy at the center of it all, the one responsible for it all. It was him, no one else. And suddenly, everything made sense. The pauses, the side looks, the careful distance, the words that always seemed to carry more than they revealed. This had never been coincidence. It had been intentional. Across the room, Anthony stood still, watching, not with anger, not with triumph, but with patience, the kind that does not demand confession. And for the first time, Alex truly saw him, not as the man he had come to respect, but as the boy he had chosen to forget. Every step Alex took toward him felt heavier than the last, because this was no longer distance across a room. This was distance across time, across choices, across consequences. When they stood face to face, the world around them faded. The music, the voices, the celebration, none of it mattered. Because this was the moment everything was measured against. Anthony? Alex stammered. The name left Alex's lips unsteady, unfamiliar, like something rediscovered after decades of silence. A pause. You finally remembered, Anthony said firmly. All this time, Alex began, but the words failed him, because there was no sentence that could hold what he now understood. Yes, all this time, Anthony had known. From the very beginning, I didn't recognize you, Alex admitted. And in that moment, that truth cut deeper than anything else. Not the past itself, but how easily it had been erased by the one who caused it. Alex searched for words to say, but words betrayed his lips, still fully submerged in the shock of the realization. Of course he knew. Some actions leave no space for justification, only consequence. And so he fell, not out of weakness, but under the weight of shame he felt. His knees met the ground as the realization fully settled. "I feel so ashamed of myself," Alex stammered. "All these years, and yet, you still did all this for me?" His voice broke. "I don't deserve this, not after everything I did." And for the first time, the man who had built everything had nothing left to hold on to. Anthony stepped forward, calm, steady. He placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, not to judge, not to elevate, but simply for closure. "A wise man once told me," he said, his voice even, "we can't change the past. Our mistakes become our experience. But we have today to change the world around us." He gestured gently to the room around them, to the lives being touched, to the future being shaped. "Look at what you've built. Look at what this has become. If the pain I went through led to this, then it was not meaningless." There was no bitterness in his voice, only clarity. "I am proud of you," he said. "Now rise. Let's celebrate, because the future ahead is bright." And for the first time that night, Anthony felt truly free. Because in the end, the greatest power is not found in rising above others. It is found in what you do when you finally can. When you have the power, the position, the chance to become what once hurt you, and you choose not to. Instead, you reach back, not to remind them of who they were, but to help them become who they could be. Because true power doesn't prove itself through dominance. It reveals itself through influence, through the ability to change another's course of life, through the quiet decision to break a cycle. And that is where this story finds its truth. Not in revenge, not in victory over another, but in compassion, in forgiveness, in the courage to choose a different ending. Because in the end, true power is not measured by how high you climb, but in how many people you help along the way.